Hello, welcome back to On the Mic with Mike. I am Mike Jarvis. In this edition, I'm speaking with Dr. Lanval Daly of Montserrat, not necessarily in his capacity as a physician or medical expert, but in his capacity as chairman of the Montserrat Conference. Now, I had the opportunity, I think for the second time, to take part in a forum online organized by the Montserrat Conference a few days ago. And very engaging, very relevant topic that was discussed with some fantastic guests as well, which Dr. Daly chaired. So, Dr. Daly, welcome to On the Mic with Mike. Great to have you.
Thank you, Mike. It's good to be here with you.
Fantastic. Now, let us start off talking about the Montserrat Conference. As I mentioned, I was involved with a previous discussion some time ago, as well as the most recent one you had. So, give us a bit of the history and background of the Montserrat Conference.
Okay, thank you for that question, Mike. The conference is about 5 years old, and we are a group of Montserratians living both in Montserrat and in the wider Montserrat diaspora. And the purpose for our existence is to engage in conversation. It's like a think tank, but we engage in conversations that are of relevance to Montserrat and particularly to the development of Montserrat. What we do is to do research on various topics. We discuss them among ourselves, ourselves meaning the steering committee, and then eventually we produce policy papers on what we are working on. Ultimately, we present these to the government of the day and ask if they would consider looking at these policy papers, and then they either do so or they don't, and the position, the policies either take root or they don't, depending on what the government decides to do. But we always want to engage with the government of Montserrat concerning important topics. And every year we have an annual conference that many people attend. And at those conferences, we expand on the policy positions that we've taken.
Now, based on what you've outlined there, could you point us to what policy papers put forward, what ideas put forward that any of the governments have actually acted on in the past 5 years of the organization's or the group's existence?
Yes, and we have presented policy papers to all of, well, the two governments that have existed in the last 5 years. I'm very pleased to tell you that the current government, Ruben Mead's government, showed keen interest in the last set of policy papers, which were on healthcare delivery. I happen to be the main author for those policy positions. And at the last election, or just before the election, excuse me, we invited the three prominent political parties to engage with us. Our idea was that we would present the policies that we had developed and interview representatives from each party and carry on a conversation where they would tell us what they felt about the policies and how their ideas might differ from ours. The only party to respond to our letter was Mr. Mead's party. And they came, the representative was Dr. Buffang, because these were health issues. And we are very pleased that the current government decided that the way we were thinking was entirely in line with how they're thinking. And they agreed that they would implement our policies without exception. So we're very proud of that. It's the first time that it's happened.
Could you give us an insight into what that policy might be? I know from your professional perspective as a medical doctor, you've also been very much involved with I don't know if I have the correct name, so help me out here. It's the Diaspora Montserrat Medical Professionals Support Group that comes to Montserrat annually to assist with healthcare delivery.
Yeah, you're thinking about the visiting consultants group. That's a group I started about 40 years ago, or maybe a little more. And the idea was that when there was need in Montserrat for a particular physician in a certain specialty, that I would try and find that physician. Because I live in Canada, this was always a physician from the Toronto area, from the University of Toronto, where I was on staff. And that physician would undertake to travel to Montserrat at their own expense and provide pro bono work in their field. And the government, in turn, would support them by providing housing and transportation. So that went on year after year after year. For reasons I don't understand, it was discontinued during the last administration. So that's the visiting consultants group that had been working.
So, what you've presented now to the current government, which you've stated that they have expressed an interest in, would this be a continuation of that, or does it contain elements of that?
No, it's a completely different set of policies that we presented to them. The question was, what can we do to bring the quality of care in Montserrat, of medical care in Montserrat, up to international standards? And I've always maintained that Montserrat is quite capable of doing that. So with that in mind, I did some research and asked a lot of questions and consulted a number of people to find out how we could get the healthcare system up to par with healthcare in London or Toronto or New York. And after I got that information, I wrote the policy paper. Essentially, just to summarize very briefly, what we're saying in that set of policies that we wrote is that it is possible. And what we really need to do is to look at a complete overhaul of the healthcare delivery system, and with the aim of establishing what we refer to as a culture change, where we would now be delivering healthcare in Montserrat according to what we describe as a culture of quality. These are words which have specific meaning, but we recognize and believe that if you're ever going to have an international quality medical service, you have to first deliver healthcare through a culture of quality, and everything else flows from that. We wanted to change the healthcare delivery system to one of quality, and then other things would fall into place.
Well, I know that that is something that Dr. Buffon herself has been very, very passionate about. So it's very encouraging to, hear that there's now some movement of that involving your organization. Well, both of your organizations, in a sense, both the Visiting Consultants Group and, in this case, the Montserrat Conference. So we're speaking about the Montserrat Conference. So just gave us a fantastic outline there of your policy proposal for health care delivery.
Yeah.
The most recent edition, so to speak, of your group discussion, which I was involved in, focused on something completely different, even though if we sort of delve into it, there would be a linkage anyway. And that is the matter of constitutional reform. Tell us about that.
Well, in recent years, many people in Montserrat and Montserratians abroad have begun to ask important questions about who we are as Montserratians. And we feel, certainly our conference feels, that we have arrived at a level of sophistication where Montserratians can determine for themselves how they will be governed. When we look at the current constitution, there is a lot of people who feel that the current constitution does not give us the leeway to be governed the way we think we should be governed. And with that in mind, the question is, how can we change that? And I know that some of this was mentioned during the last election, but outside of the election, ordinary Montserratians here in Toronto, and I'm sure in London and elsewhere, have expressed some very strong feelings about the need to revise certain parts of the Constitution. And with that in mind, the Montserrat Conference decided that we would take this up as the next big question that we will pursue. And we have taken the decision that constitutional review would be the topic of the next annual conference, which is going to take place in January next year. And when we have these conferences, Montserratians from around the world and other people who have an interest in Montserrat will take part. The first step in this discussion was what happened on Sunday when we invited not just Montserratians, but prominent people who have a particular interest in constitutional review, not just for Montserrat, but for the Eastern Caribbean and other parts of the world as well. And they were only too happy to come and talk to us about this. And what you get the impression that many different groups of people feel that their constitutions right now are holding them back. And Montserrat is certainly one of those groups. So that was what we tried to do. And we were very honored that you joined with us, as did a number of other people from Canada who have particular interest in this area and elsewhere.
I must say, from my point of view, one of the things which really struck me most during and coming out of that session of the Montserrat Conference held online was the fact that, and as I had mentioned during the meeting, there was a resolution adopted by the Montserrat Legislative Assembly that would have been earlier this year pertaining to constitutional reform. There was previously, over the past several years, an effort made, and one of the participants was involved with that as well, concerning electoral reform, which also ties into constitutional reform. Given those two very prominent developments regarding this topic, what is the Montserrat Conference proposing to do, or how are you proposing to embrace those and move that process forward? Because it is going to be a very detailed, involved, and quite possibly very lengthy process as well.
Yes. Well, we have taken this on as a major responsibility. We are in touch with people who can educate us about what constitutional reform entails, and other people who have experience in writing constitutions to help us make a case. The Montserrat Conference will take a position about whether we think that there should be constitutional reform in Montserrat and the nature of that reform. We will produce a policy paper which will state our position. And then the final act in this process will be the annual international conference that we put on, at which time many knowledgeable people who are knowledgeable about constitutions and about the Montserrat Constitution in particular, those people will gather and they will form a list. They will form the group of people who will take part in this constitutional question. It is going to be a big day, and we're very much looking forward to it. And we're working avidly as I speak to make sure that we do everything that's necessary to have a constitution or aspects of the constitution that we think are important to have a policy on these positions by January.
I do not know if it is too early to ask specifically what is it about the current constitution that the group or yourself thinks is working or not working, or if I should be asking either or alongside that, are you proposing to have this constitutional review and possibly even the outcome of it in place by the end of this current parliament, meaning in time for the next election, which would be due in 2029?
Yeah, well, I'll answer that part of the question first. We definitely want to be able to present our ideas to the local government. As I said, we work through governments, and hopefully the government will lend us an ear and try to make the changes that are necessary if they feel that they're necessary before their mandate is over. That's the wish right now. The Montserrat Conference would like to see changes made within the 5-year period of this mandate. Just what those changes are going to be, I can't say at this time. More research needs to be done. And to answer the first part of your question, we are not at this stage. We're just right at the beginning. We're not at this stage going to express an opinion about what needs to be changed in the Constitution and how the current Constitution affects the way that Montserratians are expected to behave. More research is necessary. So we're not there yet, but we will be by the time of our meeting in January.
How would you describe the Montserrat Conference, Doc? Would you say you mentioned think tank at the beginning of this conversation, but is there an element of advocacy, of lobbying in this as well, or sort of a pressure group format?
I wouldn't say pressure group. We feel strongly when we reach the stage of writing policies. We feel strongly about our policies. They are reviewed over and over again, and that's why we take a collective position on any subject. And we want the government to look favorably on what we're suggesting, and if they can't do that, we want to know why not. I don't think our advocacy goes beyond that with the government. You might be wondering if we feel that we could, without the government, probably talk to people in the UK government about these constitutional changes. We haven't made any decision like that. I suppose if the time ever came where we felt that we were being ignored by the current government, if they were not willing to talk to us, then yeah, it might be necessary for us to take an advocacy role. But that is not the case now. We are very pleased with the kind of dialogue that we've managed to establish with Reuben Mead's government.
You're also spoken about your policy papers. Are those accessible by the public? They're on a website, a social media page, if someone wanted to sort of look into what is going on with the Montserrat Conference? How is that possible?
Yes. The policies are being put up on the website. The two policy papers on healthcare are on the website, and I haven't looked at the website. It's pretty new, so I don't know what else is there, but we've taken positions on access and a position on energy, and those are going to be up on the website if they're not there yet.
Okay, I would be particularly interested in your position on access, given that it is such a current issue, and energy, given that that is also a very current issue. Could you give us an insight, an overview as to what the conference is thinking or position on those matters?
Well, I didn't have a direct hand in writing either of those two policies.
Okay.
And I haven't looked at the details on these policies. We just know that something needs to be done, and in both cases, and particularly in energy, our position was that we feel strongly that we should be looking at sources of energy that were safe for the planet. But beyond that, and the different implications of that, I am not too familiar with them. But as I said, they should be on the website now.
Okay. What is the Montserrat Conference's overarching perspective of where Montserrat is now, or where Montserrat should be, and whether or not it's headed in the right direction?
Well, let me just say that some of us, probably most of us, come from the time when Montserrat was in its heyday. And we feel very strongly that Montserrat is nowhere as good a place to live as it used to be. We believe that it's possible for Montserrat to return to the good old days, not necessarily do the same thing that people used to do in the 60s to the 80s, but Montserratians can live a better life and ought to be able to do so easily. So with that in mind, we look at various parts of the Montserrat lifestyle and try to see what we can do to make things better for the people of Montserrat. We are under no illusions, Mike, that we are going to be able to correct everything that we see as not good. We're under no illusions that the things that we are looking for will necessarily happen in our lifetime. But we believe that we have a great love for Montserrat, and we're willing to do anything in terms of research and production of policies. We're willing to do all of that so that the people who come after us can enjoy the kind of life that we had when we were children growing up in Montserrat.
I mean, Montserrat has been the quote unquote victim, as it were, of the kind of sort of double whammy natural disasters that we haven't or have hardly seen any place in the Caribbean, much less the Western Hemisphere in our lifetime. And one accepts when you made the point that a lot of the things that need to be restored, put in place, might not happen in our lifetime, but the start needs to be made, or a more aggressive stance needs to be taken in order to accelerate or propel the recovery from what happened to Montserrat. And I'm looking at both the impact of Hurricane Hugo in 1989, which kicked off the downhill spiral, as it were, just about the time the recovery started. Then the volcano started acting up, and we know the history of that. And as we speak, the population of Montserrat is declining. I mean, Montserrat went from a population back in the 1980s, a thriving, bustling, mini metropolis in its own idyllic way of around 13 or so thousand people, down to a few years ago 5,000, and now to just a little bit under 4,000. Does it make the challenge for Montserrat? And I know that we've just had an election, and there's all of this talk about reset and starting afresh and moving forward. But does it make this whole situation now more urgent, more pressing?
Oh, absolutely. What you just said is the kind of thinking that motivates the people of the Montserrat Conference to do something. We want to see the life that we had in the 70s and 80s return to our people. We want to be known again as the shining light of the Caribbean. And we want to see that in spite of the limitations that we currently have, we want to see that people who govern us are willing to think and act so that some of this might happen. And as I keep repeating, it's an ongoing process. It is not just going to happen in the 5 years. of the current mandate. We want this process to start and for us to do the best we can to restore the quality of life that was present in Montserrat before.
I know you spoke that the current government of Montserrat seems to be more, I'm choosing my words very carefully here, but seems to be more amenable, put it that way, to reaching out and listening to, giving the Montserrat Conference a listening ear. What's quite interesting is that the Montserrat Conference has within its membership people who were not or are not involved with the current administration being as a political entity. So I'm taking it that the Montserrat Conference is a non-political organization embracing people from across the political spectrum.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is one fundamental part of how we see ourselves. We are not interested in party politics. And everybody has a right, of course, to have their own political views, and all members of the Montserrat Conference do. But that does not in any way, the political views of any member of the Montserrat Conference will not in any way influence what we do and who we talk with. We always respect the government of the day, and we try to work with the government of the day if they will let us. And I'm just so excited because I think we've finally gotten a government that will talk with us.
How do other people beyond the current membership of the Montserrat Conference get involved if they want to be involved? How does that work?
We haven't done a good job of looking outside of the current membership, but I think if somebody is really interested, we would screen that person. We would try to find out why they were interested. And yeah, the Montserrat Conference is open to extending its membership. But that's one of the things that we have not done well enough in this conference, I think.
So the group currently has a pool of professionals, to put it that way, that you can draw from experiences from across a range of professions. Give us an idea.
Yes, we don't limit our work to the people who are the support group, the current support group of the Montreal Conference. We go way beyond that. We seek out people in different parts, in different specialties, and in different areas like law, medicine, etc. We do not confine ourselves to the knowledge that exists just with the members of the steering committee. We take the position that if we feel that there are people out there who have an interest and an expertise that will help to guide us in our thinking about different aspects of Montserrat development, then we will use them. As you saw in the last meeting on Sunday, there were participants who are not Montserratians. And we intend to continue doing that.
And just to point out, I think it was quite noticeable or notable even that you had as the key facilitator Justice Ralston Glasgow, who is the Solicitor General of Grenada, addressing the group on the issue of constitutional reform.
Yes. Yeah, Ralston was a choice that I made. Excuse me. My wife lives in Grenada, and we attended a party that Ralston attended, and I sat next to him, and we started talking about various aspects of Caribbean life, and we found that we both had an interest in cricket, and we both had an interest in constitutional reform, and he was very knowledgeable about the area, and so that's how this started, and he very readily agreed to address us in the Montserrat Conference, and he will continue to speak with us as much as we need him to.
I think I can safely say that's the sort of networking that the Montserrat Conference does, and the sort of expertise that's available to the group, and by extension to Montserrat as well. And I would suspect the influence that that could bring.
Yes, there are numerous people that we know we can call on to help us think our thoughts and help us create policies and write policy papers. We know that, and there's no shortage of people for what we want to do.
Well, Dr. Daly, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to be the guest on the mic with Mike for this edition, and introducing us, telling us more at the same time about the Montserrat Conference. And we look forward, or I, and of course the public, look forward to hearing more from and about the Montserrat Conference. And I will just slip in here as well, more also about your involvement with the Montserrat Professional Consultants Group, Medical Consultants Group. Thank you very much indeed. Any final words?
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming to our meeting. And thank you for allowing me to speak to the Montserrat public and tell them a little bit about what we do. I just want people to stay tuned, and hopefully everybody who is listening today will make a point of joining us for the annual conference in January.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed, Doc.
My pleasure.